Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a Pension for Life Facebook Live with the Minister of Veterans Affairs and the Associate Minister of National Defence, Seamus O'Regan, and the Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs Canada, Walt Natinchuk. Today, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions around Pension for Life, but you can also ask questions about other Veterans Affairs programming that might be of interest to you as well. Bonjour et bienvenue tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, nous aurons un sujet principal de notre session qui sera la pension à vie. Mais vous pouvez aussi poser des questions reliées à d'autres programmes et services offerts par anciens combattants. Je vous invite de poser la question dans la langue de votre choix, une des langues officielles. You're more than welcome to ask your question in any official language. Mm-hmm. With that, I will turn it over to Minister O'Regan.
Thank you, Steve. We'll get right to it, I think. This is Walt Natinchuk, Deputy Minister and former Chief of Defence Staff and National Defence. I'm going to expect that many of you who are watching now have gone through some of some of the details that are in the Pension for Life package that we presented on December 20th. I'll just begin by saying that an integral part of this process is feedback. And talking to people. We just came from, we had 2 town halls last week in Victoria and in Vancouver. Some of you may have seen them, and or heard of them anyway. And then we just had one in Halifax and Dartmouth. And this will continue right throughout the country. Just as a bit of background, of course, the Pension for Life monthly option was something that the Liberal Party had promised in the election campaign. It was something that we've been building towards. Then we, in the budget of last year, said that we would have that ready for this year. I was appointed minister in August, and we've been working steadily at it since then. So pushed it right to the limit of December 20th, but there was lots that we wanted to do with it, and we've been, I think, ambitious about it. And then Christmas happens, of course. And here we are. So we're at the point now where we're talking and getting feedback. And this, I think, this has not been said to me, but I think we can just say that we will be doing other Facebook Lives and taking more questions. So this is not a one-off. If you're watching and you don't get time to get your question, and we'll be doing this again and again and again. I'm looking at Walt saying,
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah, we will be.
Yes, sir.
Right. So let's begin with some questions.
Good, Minister. One of the questions that we see most frequently on our social media and Facebook page is, why will it take 18 months? Why will it take until April 1, 2019 for these benefits to be implemented?
That's an excellent question. Let me begin by saying that we're impatient and we want to get this out as quickly as we possibly can, but there are a few reasons why we're restricted. Firstly, the legislative. Maybe you want to speak to that.
Yeah, can I just say what we're going to do on the 1st of April 19 is bring in 3 new benefits. The pain and suffering compensation.
Oh, that this year. Yeah.
No, it's 2019. Sorry, 2019. So the Pension for Life really will have 3 new benefits: the pain and suffering compensation, the additional pain and suffering compensation, and the income replacement benefit. Those 3 benefits will apply to about 74,000 veterans who currently are clients of the new Veterans Charter for Veterans Affairs. And so with the announcement on the 20th of December, as the Minister mentioned, we now are into the effort of writing up the legislation, and that legislation program, or that process will probably take us the next 2-3 months to actually write it up and then provide it to Parliament for consideration to get it through government and get the approval. That's kind of like phase 1. Phase 2, then, we'll have to go to the Treasury Board and request the resources, that is the money and the people, the authority to hire the people, to actually do the implementation. That will take us through to the summer to get those authorities. And then finally, we'll probably take from the fall right into the spring of 19 to do the hiring and the training and the calculations of the 74,000 folks so that we can get the right amounts that are due to these veterans all the way back to as if the program began on the 1st of April 2006, the Pension for Life.
Right.
So we actually have to do calculations retrospective for all of these thousands of veterans so that we can flip the switch on the 1st of April of 2019 and ensure that all of the amounts going out and dispersed are accurate.
And I'll just probably illustrate two of the points that Walt made. I mean, firstly, it was extremely important to us that that those people who receive lump sums going back, to whenever they receive that lump sum, so under the new Veterans Charter, receive the same amount as if they had received a payment today. Not a lump sum, but a monthly amount, whatever the total award was. So it has to go back. So in other words, if you received $360,000, which is the maximum that we give now, let's say 5 years ago, then we will go back. We will figure out we'll figure out what you would receive now under what we're proposing. We would subtract the amount that you had received, and then we will work on it, going forward, the difference over a monthly period of time. I mean, in some cases, this could be a substantial amount. In some cases, it could be a smaller amount. The point being that you shouldn't be, just because you received that lump sum earlier doesn't mean that you shouldn't benefit from what we're proposing. So everybody will be treated the same. Secondly, the downside to providing more specialized packages of benefits to our veterans, it just means things get more complicated in terms of changing computer algorithms, in terms of changing services internally. Let's be frank, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking, Phoenix. I mean, it is increasingly more complicated and difficult for governments to get this right. I mean, we're talking about a pay system that's going to be retroactive for some people, and then for others, very particular to their circumstances. It means that getting that internal programming right is essential, and it takes time to do that. It takes time to train people. It takes time internally to get people used to these new services, to what we're proposing. We've already begun that now, but even given that amount of time, it will take a while. So we want to get it right, and that's why it's taking so long. And if there's a way we can shorten that time, I can guarantee you we will do it.
Thank you. The next question is from Virginia. I'm a veteran, also a veteran widow. My husband received a pension under the Pension Act and an award under the new Veterans Charter. He received most of his payout prior to his passing. I received the remainder after. How or does this affect me as his survivor with one dependent child still in school?
It's very particular.
Yeah, that's a very complex issue. What I would ask for folks in Virginia's situation is once we have the legislation through, to actually speak to the Veterans Affairs offices in terms of the interpretation of the pension for life and how it would affect her and her particular circumstances, especially as it's complex between benefits under the Pension Act. And again, we're not, under this effort, we are not addressing the Pension Act. It is only on the new Veterans Charter. What I can say, though, is that as we've consolidated 6 benefits into one, which the new one being the income replacement benefit that will come into being on the 1st of April of 2019. If a veteran is in receipt of the income replacement benefit and passes away as a result of a service-related injury, that the survivor's benefit in the past would have been 50%. We're increasing that to 70%. But I would just finish off by saying it would be worthwhile in this particular case to talk to either the call center, the National Call Center, or go into a Veterans Affairs office to see how this may apply to you.
Thank you. Our next question includes a lot of information about someone who might be injured pre-New Veterans Charter and be taken care of under the Pension Act versus somebody who would be injured post-New Veterans Charter and be looked after under the New Veterans Charter, comparing the maximum monthly pension that might be available for somebody through Pension Act versus through the New Veterans Charter and the current disability award and lump sum payment. So this is a question from Eric. In essence, his question is, there's still going to be inequity between those that were injured before 2006 and those injured after 2006, regardless of the changes that are being announced here. Why have we not returned to the Pension Act as promised?
Because the Pension Act, if you go back to 2006, and frankly, what was promised particularly was talking about a monthly pension option, which is exactly what we're delivering on with this proposal. The Pension Act of 1919, and Walt, you were there in 2006, but I mean, I can speak to it, but
not in 1919, though.
Not 1919, 2006. It didn't deliver for our veterans. All parties in the House of Commons agreed after sitting down with veterans, that it was not delivering what veterans needed. And so the idea was to have programming, to have benefits, to have vocational rehabilitation, to have all these things in place so that veterans could reestablish themselves back into society, that they could get jobs, that they could be able to care for their families, and that we would have the programming available to them. It was meant to be a living, breathing document that was constantly changed, and to be frank, that didn't happen. It remained static, and so, this is kind of, it was meant to be constantly tuned up, and I guess it's going through more of more than fine tuning right now. We're digging a little deeper and kind of doing a bit of a rehaul. But the principles of the new Veterans Charter remain the same. What was central part of the new Veterans Charter was the idea of a lump sum. But what we recognize now is that many veterans didn't like the idea of a lump sum, and many Canadians didn't like the idea of a lump sum. For some, it was a lot of money to handle at once. For a lot of Canadians, and for veterans themselves, they felt like they were kind of being written off the ledger. And that wasn't the intent at all. One of the benefits of also having a monthly financial benefit is that aside from the fact that it's a little easier to handle, and I should note too that we're also paying $500 for a third party, up to $500 for a third party financial advice to come in to see what option's best for you. You can decide that. Lump sum for some people who are older still makes sense. But for most people, there is the idea of a lump sum. It's financially easier to handle, but also it keeps us in touch with the veteran, which we realize is essential because we know enough, for instance, about PTSD now to know that it can creep up and 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road can take hold. And so it's important that we constantly check in. So no, we're not going back to the Pension Act. But what we are taking is taking the very best of the new Veterans Charter and we're fine-tuning it. We're improving it, I should say, more substantially. Go ahead.
Can I just add, Minister, just to reinforce what you said is, a lot of the veterans have come forward and a lot of the associations have come forward and said, please do not go back to the Pension Act. Because it was kind of a cookie-cutter approach, that it was giving veterans an amount of money and then kind of leaving them to their own devices in terms of how they would reestablish themselves into communities and into society. And there was nothing there for their well-being, to assist them in education, to assist their families, and assisting them in finding a new purpose in life.
Yeah.
And so as the Minister indicated, what folks came back with, they said, hey, listen, take the best of the Pension Act, which is a monthly amount that really confirms the connection between the Government of Canada and those veterans on an ongoing basis and into the future. And then the second is to ensure that you have a whole suite of benefits and support programs that can be tailored to the unique needs of the veteran, so that if they can go back to work, if they can find purpose, if they want to take up a hobby, and they've got focus, that's terrific. But if they don't, if they need to go through treatment, if they need to go through vocational rehabilitation, that the financial security is there. Part of your question is to ask whether, are we disadvantaging folks under the new Veterans Charter compared to the Pension Act? And I would say is when you compare apples for apples, and again, some of the advice that we heard and the direction we got from Parliament is take care of those who are most in need. That when we look at those who are seriously injured, really seriously injured, someone who got hurt perhaps in Bosnia compared to someone who got hurt in Afghanistan, they have similar injuries at the very highest level of the disability scale, and we compare what benefits that they could be receiving, we are actually into the zone of similar financial supports. And so below those folks, it's a question of what the need is, and that is really the goodness of the new Veterans Charter.
And it depends on their ability to work. I mean, I think your ability to work, your ability to have meaningful work is essential to not only providing for your family, for yourself, but to rehabilitating. And we put that at the very core of what we're proposing, because we know there's nothing better than work.
La prochaine question vient de Stéphane et il demande: qu'est-ce qu'il va m'arriver car je reçois l'allocation impact sur carrière plus son supplément? Je pense que cela va me nuire beaucoup financièrement.
Encore, ça dépend sur la situation. Si un ancien combattant veut avoir une occupation et avoir stabilité financière, c'est la meilleure situation et solution. Mais si un ancien combattant a besoin de traitement médical, psychologique, sociaux ou vocationnel, on aura le bénéfice pour la stabilité financière avec cette consolidation de 6 bénéfices dans un. Ouais. Et en même temps, avec cette bénéfice, c'est quoi cette nouvelle que l'ancien combattant peut travailler avec un salaire environ 20 000 sauf une coupure de bénéfices. Alors, ça doit renforcer le potentiel d'avoir un but et encore le réétablissement dans la communauté.
Minister and Deputy, there's a couple of questions that are very similar to that one in English. I'm going to run through just those quickly and give you an opportunity to answer there too. So Angie asks, will veterans who are currently receiving Career Impact Allowance and Career Impact Allowance Supplement continue to receive these benefits for life after April 2019, or will recipients lose their CIA and CIAS monthly benefits? Dennis wants to know how this is better than the old pension system because you're taking away the CIA or CIA supplement and replacing it with a 1% for career progression. And Leland's asking whether or not under the PFL he'll lose any of his existing benefits. These are similar questions to the one that Stefan just asked. I want to give you a chance to answer that in English.
Go ahead.
So if I can just kind of rewind. So one of the mandate items that the government directed for the minister and the department is to simplify and consolidate all of these benefits. So for those veterans who are going through treatment, for those veterans who require vocational rehabilitation, and to provide them financial security and to simplify the whole thing, we're taking 6 benefits and we're integrating them into one. So the earning loss benefit on a short-term earning loss benefit on an extended basis, the career impact allowance, the career impact allowance supplement, the retirement income security benefit, and the supplementary retirement benefit will get all consolidated into one benefit, which will be benchmarked to 90% of the veteran's pre-release income. It will be indexed going into the future based upon the consumer price index. For those folks who got hurt earlier in their careers, for folks who are less than 65 years old, to recognize career progression, in addition to the consumer price index, there will be a 1% career progression factor to increase that amount. And for those veterans who got hurt perhaps while they were on their basic engagement, while they were privates, corporals, if they were reservists and at a low income, we're going to set a floor of $48,000 and change to make sure that the income replacement benefit has the floor that will ensure that they are part of the middle class. In addition to that, we are going to allow veterans to make $20,000 before applying any offsets from any other benefits they might receive. And that will allow them, if they wish to pursue a part-time job, to have some kind of a purpose outside the house, that they can be encouraged to do that into the future. What is key as we do the implementation, and that's one of the reasons why it's going to take a little bit of time to get the calculations right, when we do this, what we want to make sure is that no veterans will make less than what they're making now.
Exactly.
So when someone is getting, and they mentioned they're getting the Career Impact Allowance, the Career Impact Allowance Supplement, and the ELB, they will be grandfathered and protected going into the future. And that amount that they will receive will be indexed going into the future to ensure that they will not be in a losing proposition. 2
principles there. Obviously one, making this as simple as we possibly can, because when Walt talks about the 6 programs, we're talking about 6 different hoops to jump through, 6 different application processes, sometimes with each individual one, you're talking about different privacy considerations, and I mean, there's a lot. It becomes very complicated from the veteran's point of view. So keeping it simple is a central tenet to what we're doing, and ensuring again that work is at the is at the center of this, so that if you are able to find some honest income, on top of whatever benefits you're receiving, where you can make up to $20,000, you shouldn't be penalized for that.
Thank you. Wes posted the following message. Good afternoon, Minister O'Regan and Deputy Minister Nitinchuk. What measures are you taking to ensure that the relationships between Canadian veterans and their case managers are not, quote, adversarial?
Well,
I would say, first of all, case managers who by profession are social workers, psychologists, some have a background in nursing. We're hiring a lot of folks who have been veterans, and for example, here in Halifax, 28 of our staff here are either former serving, currently serving reservists, or spouses. We want to make sure we have the right kind of matchup of case manager working with the veterans. And what I've found now, I've been in the job 3 years, is that the common characteristic amongst our case managers, and really all employees in the department, is one of empathy. And so we want to make sure that we have the right kind of matchup between the case managers and the veteran service agents working with the veterans.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want any situation where there's an adversarial relationship. If there's an issue, let us know. The case managers who I meet time and again are want to help, and certainly from the very outset, I've said where you can take a chance and where you can move immediately. When I say take a chance, I just mean like move immediately to help a veteran. Do it, and in turn, I got your back. Use your judgment, and I just want to get rid of as many processes as possible. When it's clear to a case manager what they need to do in order to be able to help a veteran, I want them to be able to do it. There should never be an adversarial relationship. We want to create a culture where people are being helped.
Vous avez parlé un peu à ce sujet tantôt, mais la question est, je croyais que la pension à vie serait offerte en 2018. Pourquoi faut-il attendre jusqu'en 2019?
On a beaucoup de travail à faire dans 1 an et demi. Et vraiment, il y aura 3 phases. La première phase, c'est l'approbation de la Chambre de communes et le gouvernement pour cet programme de pension. Et ça va prendre probablement 3 ou 4 mois pour ce processus d'approbation par la Chambre de communes et le gouvernement. Après ça, le ministère doit demander pour les ressources du secrétaire de trésor. C'est les ressources pour nos employés et même les fonds pour l'architecture, l'informatique, pour faire le travail sur la transition vis-à-vis la pension pour la vie. Et la troisième phase, c'est vraiment la dotation des gens, des employés, pour faire le travail et même faire toutes les calculations. On aura environ presque 80 000 gens. On doit faire toutes les calculations pour tous les anciens Canadiens qui ont reçu un bénéfice jusqu'au 1er avril 2006 et faire toutes les calculations. On peut affecter cet bénéfice le 1er avril 2019.
Dave asks, I'm a current member and medically releasing. Where is my support to join the federal government? Where is the support for transition? What are you going to do to help vets find government jobs?
Well, you can speak because we're making significant improvements there.
Absolutely. Just to say, as the minister has authorized that inside the department, in fact, announced when we were in Toronto in the fall, the creation of the Veterans Hiring Unit.
Yeah.
So in Veterans Affairs, we have a cell. Sorry, sir.
No, go ahead.
We have a cell that is a combination of Veterans Affairs folks, and again, these are veterans themselves who are working side by side with the Public Service Commission to assist veterans in landing jobs in the public service. The minister has written to all of his colleagues in government asking them to ensure that positions that they have open for veterans, not only in the Ottawa situation, but coast to coast, whether it be fisheries and oceans, whether it be in taxation centres, whether it be in correction services facilities, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, positions that are available across the country that all these other departments recognize the huge skills and capability of veterans and land them in roles in government. And so, again, based upon medically releasing veterans, there are preferential rights that folks have based upon their medical releases that they have, and that can be, you can receive assistance by going to the Veterans Hiring Unit at Veterans Affairs, contact them, they can coach you through the process and assist you in landing a job across the country.
And that's what we're doing now. You know, aspirationally, you know, just so you have an idea of where we're going, you know, transition right now is top of mind. It goes by various names within government. Convergence is one of them, and closing the seam. I mean, I can tell you that when the Prime Minister named me Minister of Veterans Affairs, Associate Minister of National Defence, the first thing that he said to me, and my marching orders, as it were, was to close the seam. And you know, exactly to what you're talking about, when you leave the military, ensuring that that transition is as seamless as possible. As my brother put this to me, and then Walt reiterated it later, which is we're one of the best in the world at creating soldiers, at training soldiers. Now we've got to apply those talents to creating veterans, good veterans. And by that I mean, you know, ensuring that people are prepared for that transition. And it's tough. I mean, one thing that, you know, we've learned, and I've learned through you too, is that it's tough to acknowledge that you're leaving. And for anybody in any job, and I mean, you know, I think of when I decided to leave Canada AM, I mean, when I was hosting that, the idea of telling my co-hosts, my team, that I was leaving wore me down. I mean, it's tough. I can only imagine in a culture like the military how tough that is, because you feel like you're letting people down. So the idea of preparing for leaving is something that, frankly, I don't think anybody's very comfortable with, but I would acknowledge that people in the military particularly so. But we got to do it because the transition can be tough. It can be tough, I know this myself, when you are in a culture where everything's looked after, where your schedule is looked after, where your pay, your benefits, where you know them all, you don't, not something you have to worry about, you know, for 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25 years, however long the course of time may be, and then it just, boom, ends. And you're left to your own devices. And it can be really tough. It was tough for me. You know, it broke me. It was a lot to handle, and I couldn't handle it, and so I had to get help. And rather than having to do that, it would be great if we could prepare people for that transition, and that's a huge part of what we're working on right now with the Department of National Defence. You know, I have my marching orders, and you know, Minister Sajjan has received the same. And you know, after I was sworn in, I finally had a chance to sit down with him after a couple of days in the Esquimalt. You know, we realized one of our top priorities. We've got to get this done. We've got to make sure things are easier for people when they make that transition.
And I just want to reinforce this point, is that when you're coming out of the Canadian Armed Forces, recognizing that we all volunteered to serve, and yet when you're being released medically, you know, it's like you don't really have a choice, and that really is tough for folks. So ensuring that we have a plan and land someone with a purpose right after you leave uniform and leave, you know, the family feel that we have in the Canadian Armed Forces is absolutely key. The term I was looking for before was the priority hiring for veterans in the public service, and again, you can look or you can make application for your priority status and get that done before you leave the Canadian Armed Forces for a public service job. But I also want to highlight another benefit that's coming online as of the 1st of April of this year, so not even 19 this year, and that is the Career Transition Service to assist veterans in landing jobs in the private sector. And so this is a benefit that comes into being on 1st of April of 18. It's not only for veterans, both medically released and releasing voluntarily, veterans who are releasing on retirement, for spouses, common law partners, and survivors, and that is career transition services to assist folks in actually landing a new purpose, a new job if they want. This is more than just resume writing. It is counseling, and if folks need it, it is job placement. So if there's nothing in the public service that either takes your interest, or if things don't work out that way, this program that comes online and on the 1st of April 18 will be there to support you.
Basically anything that we can do, to lower people's anxiety about transition. Anything that we can do, we are open to suggestions. You can post them here, or let us know, because that's essential.
Thank you. Amanda asks, would you please explain Pension for Life and how it relates to widows under the NVC? Will you verify that it applies to us?
So again, how it applies to survivors is that with the consolidation of the income replacement benefit, that is taking the 6 benefits that I mentioned before and bringing them into one, is that if the veteran passes away and the veteran was on the income replacement benefit, then the survivor, rather than getting 50% of the income replacement benefit, would be getting 70%. And there's a lot more detail here with regard to at what age the veteran passes away, and whether the death is due to a service-related injury or not service-related injury. So I would ask you to get a hold of Veterans Affairs for the specifics. But at a higher level, the idea is that survivors would be receiving 70% rather than 50% of the income replacement benefit.
With a clear acknowledgement that survivors are key to a veteran's transition and to a veteran's rehabilitation where needed, and that almost everything that we do now when we speak of veterans, we almost always, I know when I'm giving a speech or giving a talk, it's always veterans and their families, and that repetition is not meant to be trite. It is meant that it's real, because families live through this too. Our caregivers benefit is a clear acknowledgement of that, because that sentiment was expressed to us by veterans and their families, that the caregiver is essential. And so now it's a $1,000 tax-free benefit paid directly to that caregiver, which is generally the spouse or partner. And the other thing that we've learned, I've certainly learned in my short time as minister, is that it's not just about the money, although the money is very important. It's about the recognition of service, the recognition of the work that happens, by a husband or by a wife, by a spouse, partner, could be a child. The care that they provide is so important, and this is us, monthly saying thank you.
Can I also add, and Minister, what you said just triggered me, that to reinforce that as of the 1st of April of this year, the time limit for a survivor to have access to vocational rehabilitation, the time limit goes away. It was a one-year time limit, and in recognition of the role that the family provides to the veteran, that if the survivor wishes to go through vocational rehabilitation, there's no longer a year limit. And the other is that career transition support that I've just mentioned is open to the survivor as well.
Yeah.
Minister, Linda asks, why is there a backlog of 30,000 claims?
I'd like to be able to give a very complicated answer to a very complicated question, albeit it sounds very simple. I guess partially, and I'll contribute to this, partially it's because we have been able to respond in a more substantive way to the needs of veterans, and because we have increased benefits in some respects, it has increased demand, and it's very. I think you can speak more from an operational point of view, but it's tough for us to kind of get ahead of that. I mean, why don't you take us back a bit?
Can I just say to start off that the total amount of work inside the department for files is about 27,000.
Right.
And so I think there's a number around 20,000 of that where it's within the timeline still. So the backlog that is work that is late is actually in the order of about 10,000 files, thereabouts. So it's not the 30,000. That describes the entire workload, that is coming in. And as the Minister indicated, because of a number of new benefits that have come online in the past 2 years, the increase in the number of files has been extraordinary. So we have an increase of about 30% more files than we have in the past. In addition to the same folks who are adjudicating those files are also adjudicating things like priority hiring in the public service, where you have to look at the file. So we've added on more work to the same employees who are there. Now, in the past, the government has given us additional folks, and we're making the case right now to go back to government and ask for additional folks because we really don't see that the work will go away.
No.
At the same time, what we're trying to do is improve the way we make decisions and expedite decision making so that, for example, 30% of all of our work are hearing issues, whether it be tinnitus or loss of hearing. And we're looking, how can we make that a lot faster? Can we do it digitally? Can we leverage artificial intelligence? You know, a lot of our work is on disruption of musculoskeletal, like ankles, knee, hips, and back. Can we expedite decision making for those kinds of things? And the other one, which is a big one, is the mental health injuries. And we're taking on a much more presumptive approach.
Yeah.
You may want to mention
Well,
that.
I mean, just the fact that if we know you served and if you're suffering from PTSD, then that's enough. You know, and we will treat you accordingly. So, you know, where we can compress that time, you know, that's important. I mean, I think the bottom line is that, you know, any wait time is inexcusable. We know that. We don't want anybody to have to wait for the benefits which they are deserving. And, you know, I'll be frank that the past few months we have been, I hate to say it, but you know, really myopic. I mean, one thing you learned as a member of Parliament and you learn as minister is that things are finite, believe it or not. And it's not just money, which is finite, it's time. And when, you know, we have concentrated on Pension for Life, and now, you know, I've repeated time and again, and just even today, that we really now have to devote that same energy and resources to getting rid of those backlogs. I mean, if we can, even by a few percentage points, those are individual cases. So, you know, we get it. We've got to find ways to cut back on that backlog, and we won't be happy until we do that.
Christopher asked the following question. Various studies have shown that mortality rates among veterans show that life expectancy is less than that of the civilian base. Are you factoring in veterans' mortality or general stats for civilians?
Boy, that's a really detailed question. I would really have to go back to our researchers to make sure I'm speaking truth there. So I would be reluctant to actually give you a categorical answer in that regard, to be absolutely honest with you.
Let's get back to you on that. If we could take note of who asked that question, maybe we can post it here or something, because I think that's a very important question.
Yeah.
It is such an important topic
Yeah.
that I think it's not. I'd rather just say up front, let me get back to you with a very precise answer, because you do not want to muddle around with it.
And we can connect you right to our researchers, so we actually have the information. And you should know, every 3 years we've got this really comprehensive life after service study, and looking out at and working with the Canadian Armed Forces, looking at mortality rates in the Canadian Armed Forces for a whole host of ailments. And so we would like to be able to give you the benefit of that research.
Next question is from Walter. He would like to know how you're going to ensure that no veteran ends up with a lesser amount as a result of the changes being made.
Well, I think what we can say is, firstly, through legislation, which we're working on now,
Yeah.
and we've designed this so that there's nobody who's receiving benefit right now under the new Veterans Charter who will receive less. You will, you know, a few may receive about the same amount, but most are going to receive more, and that's very purposely the way that we've designed this. The accumulation of, you know, pain and compensation, additional pain and compensation, or pain and suffering, additional, income replacement benefit. The way that we've orchestrated this is that won't happen. And again, just to repeat, you know, the essential element here is work. Your either ability to work, or sometimes you can't because of the nature of your injury. What was essential for me was that the system have an element of flexibility, and what was top of mind for me was PTSD. Knowing what we know now, which is that PTSD can come back after 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. By that I mean you may be able to work, and then 5 years or 10 years down the road, you don't know the day, you may not be able to. And that you would be able to step out, you would be able, income replacement benefit is there for you, that you don't have to feel the anxiety of supporting yourself, supporting your family. And that when you are well again, when we've got you, rehabilitated to a point where you can go back to work, that you can go back to work. And then, should it take hold again, and that happens, that you can step out again, that you can step in again, all the while, within our system, us knowing where you are, when you need help, and when you're able to go back.
And that's what the income replacement benefit is supposed to do, is give you that security, that financial security when you're actually requiring that assistance, treatment, vocational rehab, what have you, and then setting it up such that people will be grandfathered so that you will receive no less than what the current suite of the 6 programs are providing you, whether it be the earning loss benefit or the CIA and the CIS, in addition to being grandfathered, to have it indexed and growing into the future with the 1%, or not with the 1%, with the consumer price index. It will be protected into the future. And at the same time, as the Minister indicated, under the income replacement benefit, that you'll be able, if you want to get a part-time job, you'll be able to make $20,000 without having any offset of that amount.
It's meaningful work, meaningful work, meaningful work.
Another question from Wes for you, Minister and Deputy. Why do I have to do a reassessment every year?
Well, I mean, first of all, I guess it would depend on the particular instance of the nature of the injury. But
yeah, and so and often what happens with regard reassessments is individuals are getting more than they did before. And so when and this is a really important thing, because I know under some of the programs require reassessment, and with the Veterans Independence Program, we check in on folks. By and large, the results of these additional reviews over time is that the situation has deteriorated for the veteran, and we're going to give them more support. And so sometimes, folks don't want to be bothered, but actually their situation is, they're not getting younger, and they'll never be the same age they were when they walked in the recruiting center. Generally, we all kind of age and creak more, but generally folks need more assistance over time. And so one of these aspects of reassessment is really that care, to say, can we do more for you? And what are your circumstances now, and what can we do to assist? And at the same time, we don't want to be intrusive. We don't want to make it difficult. But generally, it's out of a sincere effort to make sure you get the care that you need.
And there's a mental health element here too. The nature of your injury may be physical, but just by going through a transition, or depression can set in, anxiety can set, you don't know, and you yourself may not know, but a trained professional on the other end of that line, with 2 or 3 of the right kinds of questions, can perhaps get an indication that you are going down a path where you might need some help. I know that firsthand, so I can say that, and I think that check-in is important. I'm certain at times it just seems like a drag, or but I'm sure there have been cases out there where flags have raised because suddenly that became clear that somebody was suffering.
David asks, how does this new program, Pension for Life, affect those who already received a lump sum for an injury post-2006?
If you've already received a lump sum, then you will benefit from this. That was another essential core element of this program, was that it be retroactive. You may have missed it, but somebody had asked earlier why this is going to take a little amount of time some amount of time to roll out, and one of the reasons is that it's retroactive, and that takes time. So by that I mean, if you received a lump sum, then this applies from the time that you received the lump sum. So if you received the lump sum 5 years ago, then we're going to go back 5 years and look at how much we owe you. What the difference is between what you received and what you would receive under the new system. And then you will receive a new monthly check that will make up for that difference. In some instances, that could be a substantial amount. In some instances, it might be a smaller amount. The point being that you will benefit from this system, and it is retroactive from the time that you got your lump sum. That was extremely important to us. It does add to, it does complicate the rollout, because then we got to go back to several thousand. I can't remember the exact number now, but of people who have already received lump sums and apply this. But it will be worth it, because that's a very important principle.
Minister and Deputy, maybe a follow-up to that one. A number of people have indicated, as part of the announcement on December 20th for Pension for Life, the Minister clearly indicated that VAC staff would be briefed and up to speed and able to answer questions. Some veterans have called asking for a specific question around how much may I be entitled to receive as part of a conversion from a disability award, and that's not information that our VAC staff is able to provide at the moment. Could you provide some clarity around what information the VAC staff might be able to provide now and when additional information might become available?
Yeah, I hate to say this, but it is in motion. I mean, what we've put out now is the skeleton, the goals, and how we want, what we want to achieve. It does get down to the minute details now of how exactly we will achieve it, and that's part of the the year that we have now to get this going is finding out those details. And those details, the devil is in the details. Those details will then determine how much exactly you will be getting. So we wanted our staff to be able to do was in general terms be able to talk about what we're talking about right now. The principles behind this, I mean, everything that we know right now, and the goal, how they are applied in individual cases, we are working on, and it will take some time. I mean, these are in each individual case. You can imagine, you've got calculations and computations, and it will take a bit of time.
And I just want to reinforce that, and I think that the number is north of 70,000. Somewhere between 70,000 and 80,000 we think will be veterans who are clients as of the 1st of April of 2019. And so what we need to do actually is look into every one of those files and to do the calculations for everybody. So going back to why it's taking so long, as the Minister indicated, we still need to get the approval through government over the next few months. And so as we speak here right now, the legislation is being written that will articulate things like grandfathering your benefits and so on. So it's tough for the employees to actually lay out, here's your circumstance, when in fact this thing, we've got the policy approval. That's what the Minister announced on the 20th of December. The government has earmarked $3.6 billion on top of what we received in years before, the 6.3, almost $10 billion for this program, for the whole suite of programs. And so it's getting it through the House, getting the authority to hire the additional folks, and then actually getting the information technology, information systems to do the mathematical calculations for the more than 70,000 folks, and then to run through those in the fall. I don't think we'll be able to actually answer a lot of these questions for a few months while this thing is playing out. But what is key is that when we flip the switch on 1 April 2019, that the correct amounts are going out to all the veterans, and that linkage is there between veterans and government. And I would just want to encourage folks, if you're not yet on MyVac account, please, please, please register for a MyVac account and maintain contact with the department.
Deputy, perhaps you could answer the following question that a number of people have been asking, including Alain. Why are the RCMP still under the old pension system?
So the RCMP come under the RCMP Act and allows the leadership of the RCMP that comes under the Minister of Public Safety to administer their pension plan. And so back in 2005, 2006, when the government dealing with Canadian Armed Forces veterans decided that, again, because of the problems that we had with the Pension Act, leaving veterans after getting, for the most part, a very small pension, that a lot of our veteran comrades were actually destitute. And so the new Veterans Charter was created to enable well-being and allowing folks to settle into society. The RCMP decided at that time that they would not go on to the new Veterans Charter. And again, I won't get into the detail. I would actually refer you to the RCMP. But the RCMP have asked, and for decades, the Veterans Affairs Department has administered the RCMP pension on behalf of the RCMP. So we have a memorandum of understanding with the RCMP, and our folks administer this program for them, but it was their decision to remain on the pension, on the RCMP pension.
Minister and Deputy, Ryan asked the following question: how come all mental health claims are not rated at 100%?
I would just say to folks, and again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but what we are aware of is that that portion of folks who have a mental health injury, some of them actually with the right treatment early on, with the right triage, diagnosis, treatment, and counseling and follow-up, can actually function in society.
Absolutely.
There is a small number who, notwithstanding diagnosis and treatment, have difficulty in maintaining routines in society. But that's a small number. And so one of the key aspects to wellness actually is having a sense of purpose, having security, having identity, and so on. And with counseling and creating that supportive environment around folks, people can actually get on with life and be functional in human life. And I've met many of our battle buddies, comrades, shipmates, wingmates who are in that situation. So to categorize everybody as at 100%, I'm not sure.
Gosh, no, absolutely, not. It's in no way accurate. I mean, within and I know this is a mental health advocate, I mean, within the scope of mental health, in the same way, I mean, not to be glib, but in the same way that you would talk about physical health, you've got varying diseases of different, in different orders. Some anxiety, for instance, depression, bipolar, and then within those, you have, grades of intensity. It's really difficult, it's really difficult to quantify these things. Extremely difficult. It's difficult for us. It's difficult for anybody. It's difficult when you're suffering it yourself to quantify exactly where you are, what percentage you are. From our point of view, in terms of how these programs will affect you, what it does come down to is whether or not you're able to work. Is that really what is the end effect of whatever it is you have, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's PTSD, or, as is the case, combinations of many of these things. At the end of the day, are you able to work? And financially and in terms of services, that's where we come in, and that's the important bit of it. Mental health, it's such a broad spectrum, and within that, different grades of intensity. So, ultimately it's very difficult to quantify these things, but we just do our best to see what the tangible result is of whatever it is you're going through. And one of those most important things from our point of view is whether you can work or not work.
Nous avons juste une couple de minutes qui reste. There's just a few minutes left. I'll try and get through a few more questions with you. Aaron asks the following question: when will VAC digitize our relationship and do away with manila envelopes, thus bringing everything up to speed and to the century we are currently in?
I wish it was tomorrow.
Never too soon. Oh, yeah,
I wish
exactly.
it was tomorrow.
Never too soon.
Yeah, no, we're working hard really on digitizing, and again, with support from government, we're looking at how can we. And one of the first aspects of digitizing is just the transfer of medical records from the Canadian Armed Forces into Veterans Affairs. That's a big one, and for some of the folks who've been in the Canadian Armed Forces for a few decades, some of your medical files are not digitized. And so we're working with the Canadian Armed Forces to not only get those medical records digitized, but then also how they transfer into our department so they can be used in terms of various assessments and provide support to everybody. So just to say is it's a huge effort that is currently ongoing, and I wish it was tomorrow.
Yeah. And, if you look, governments have been grappling with how to make healthcare right across the board more efficient and to use digital technology to make things more efficient. And it's tough, mainly because for a few reasons, but the bureaucracy around healthcare, providing healthcare is big, and there are huge privacy issues and implications, so we're obviously very cautious with information. But there is a great deal of momentum, I would say, that I've seen in my brief tenure within government to move this along. And certainly we've been talking to people within Treasury Board and Public Works and Procurement on different programs that we can avail of, because there is a real whole of government want and desire to digitize and make things easier and more accessible for the people that we serve. And I'm always saying, hey, make sure that we're on the top of that list, because I think that our veterans could really benefit from that. Again, to the deputy's point earlier, saying to people out there, if you're not on MyVac, sign up, because it is a way that we can provide those services, some of those services, more efficiently, and it just increases our relationship, the depth of our relationship with you.
Eric asks, every veteran who receives the supplement right now will lose $1,000 a month starting in April 2019. Please explain why.
The supplement, you're talking about the CIA?
The CIA supplement.
So again, the idea of the income replacement benefit would ensure that everyone who is receiving the whole suite of the 6 benefits would not lose.
Yeah.
And that is being grandfathered and being not only grandfathered but indexed going into the future. But when the program comes in, the income replacement benefit will be benchmarked to 90% of the pre-release income, and in addition to that, have the career progression factor of 1% and allowing folks to work for or $20,000 of income before offsets. But someone who is in receipt of the Career Impact Allowance supplement would not be disadvantaged. They would be grandfathered into the future, and that amount would be indexed.
Cliff asks, so if you're not at 100% disability, what can you expect for a lifelong pension?
I guess I would say it's got to be based upon what your circumstances are. Because the goodness of the new Veterans Charter, it is tailored to the individual's injuries, the individual's barriers to reestablishment in Canadian society. And there's a difference between, say, a low level of disability for hearing and a low level of disability for mental health. Someone who has a hearing issue might be able to work, whereas someone who has a mental health issue may not be able to work. And the goodness of the new Veterans Charter allows us to table these benefits to assist the individual circumstances of the veteran. So the short answer to the question is it depends on the circumstances for that individual veteran.
And there will be instances, certainly when we've looked at different scenarios. If you were, I think, 25 years old and you were eligible for, let's say, a $70,000 lump sum, and you decided to go for a monthly amount, then that total, assuming I think that we're looking at a life expectancy of 83. I hate quantifying these things, but this is what you have to do. Then it would actually be $170-some thousand. Yeah. So you would benefit by some $100,000 with a 20% disability if you decided to go with the monthly. And one of the reasons we designed it that way is because we really are trying to find ways to encourage people to take the monthly. Only because it increases, it makes sure that we're in constant contact with you. And for reasons that I cited earlier, that's very important because we don't know, particularly with issues, I'm always thinking mental health, but with issues of mental health, sometimes that can take hold later on in life, and it's good if we have that relationship and we can help you.
And there'll be one last question. It'll be this one, Minister. Wayne asks, Mr. Minister, will you be keeping the lines of communication open, letting us know as progress is made in order to avoid the stress and angst?
Especially with that last comment. Yes, we will. I will be, straight up with you about where we are in terms of progress. This will be the beginning of, I'm telling you this now while we're on camera, this will be the beginning of many Facebook Lives or Facebook's Live. I'm not sure what the correct plural is. It will be the beginning of many. I will be straight with you in terms of where we are in progress. I completely sympathize with anxiety. And, one of the best things we can do to alleviate that is to just be as transparent as we possibly can. So you have my solemn vow that we will do that. And this is the beginning of many. I encourage you to tune into these. If you know other people who you think will benefit from this, please do. And throw any questions at us, and we'll answer them as best we can. But the core tenet of this is to alleviate anxiety when it comes to transition. People out there, so many people, and not just veterans, but a lot of people in general. Finances, changing jobs, changing circumstances. There's a lot of anxiety out there. Anything that we can do to alleviate that, we will do.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy. Merci pour tous les participants et pour
Thank
toutes
you,
les
everybody.
questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you again.